Lieutenant Heijin Park stood at the large window of the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel, watching Earth slowly rotate below. The blue planet looked peaceful from up here, but he knew better. His grandfather had taught him about the dangers that lurked in Earth's wildest places. The ship's computer chimed softly. "Lieutenant Park, the Myraxian delegation requests your presence in meeting room 3. Heijin straightened his dark blue uniform and checked his translator device. The Myraxians were new to Earth's diplomatic circle, and he wanted to make a good impression. As Earth's cultural liaison officer, it was his job to help alien species understand humans better. When the door slid open, Heijin had to look down to meet the eyes of the Myraxian delegates. They looked like a cross between praying mantises and crabs, with hard shells that shimmered in colors of green and blue. Their smaller size didn't make them any less important. They controlled more than 50 resource-rich planets across 3 star systems. "Welcome, honored delegates," Heijin said, bowing slightly. "I hope you're finding your stay comfortable." The lead Myraxian, Ambassador Kix, clicked his mandibles together, their way of showing politeness. "Most comfortable, Lieutenant Park, though we have concerns we wish to discuss." Heijin sat down at the round table, designed to accommodate various alien body types. "Please share your concerns. That's why I'm here." Ambassador Kix activated a hologram in the center of the table. It showed several planets, each covered in vast swamplands and thick forests. "These are worlds we have offered your government for colonization. All have breathable air, acceptable gravity, and rich soil for farming. Yet your people keep refusing them. We don't understand." The second Myraxian, Science Officer Trill, moved her antennae in what Heijin recognized as confusion. The resources on these worlds could support millions of humans. The swamplands are perfect for growing many earth crops. Why do your people show such hesitation? Heijin thought about how to explain it. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Sometimes fear isn't weakness, it's wisdom passed down through blood and bone." "Let me tell you about my grandfather," Heijin began. "Dr. Tadwan Park. He studies Earth's largest snakes, especially anacondas. 20 years ago, he led an expedition into Earth's Amazon rainforest. What he experienced there helps explain why humans are careful about swamplands." The third Myraxian, cultural expert Zax, took notes on her datapad. "Please continue. We wish to understand." Heijin pulled out his personal tablet and brought up old photos. "Before I tell you about my grandfather's expedition, you need to understand what an anaconda is." He showed them a picture of a large green anaconda wrapped around a tree trunk. "This is one of the smaller ones." The Myraxians moved closer to study the image. Their compound eyes reflected the green scales of the massive snake. "On Earth," Heijin explained, "we have predators that can grow longer than this room. They can swim faster than humans, squeeze harder than your battle mechs, and swallow prey larger than themselves. And they hunt in swamps." Ambassador Kix's shell changed color slightly, a sign of surprise. "But your species has mastered space travel. You have energy weapons and force fields. Surely such creatures are no longer a threat." Heijin smiled patiently. "Let me tell you what happened to my grandfather's team. They had modern equipment too. Cameras, GPS, emergency beacons, even sonic repellent devices. None of it mattered when the waters rose, and the giant struck." The door chimed, and Jai Yun from Earth's diplomatic corps entered the room. She carried several data crystals and nodded to Heijin. "I brought the footage you requested, Lieutenant." "Perfect timing," Heijin said. "Jai Yun is our expert in explaining Earth's wildlife to other species. She can help me show you why we respect our swamps." Jai Yun set up the hologram projector as Heijin continued. "You see, respected delegates, humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or fastest. We survived because we learned from our fears. Every time we got too confident, nature reminded us to stay humble." The lights dimmed as Jai Yun started the first recording. The hologram showed a peaceful-looking swamp at sunset. The Myraxians watched intently as ripples appeared in the dark water. This footage, He-Jin said quietly, was taken by my grandfather's team. What you're about to see happened despite all their preparation and technology. It taught all of us, why some fears should never be forgotten. The recording continued to play as He-Jin remembered his grandfather's words from that morning before he left for space. Tell them about the Anaconda, He-Jin. Tell them why we still look carefully where we step, no matter how far we've come. Some lessons are written in our DNA. Science Officer Trill raised her front appendage. But Lieutenant Park, surely with proper precautions. The hologram suddenly showed a massive shape exploding from the water. The Myraxians jumped back, their shells turning pale with shock. That, He-Jin said calmly, is just the beginning of the story. Would you like to know what happened next? Why my grandfather still wakes up sometimes, checking his legs to make sure nothing's wrapped around them. All three Myraxians nodded, their antennae quivering with a mixture of fear and fascination. Even Jai-Yun, who had seen the footage many times, felt a shiver run down her spine. He-Jin took a deep breath. His grandfather's voice seemed to whisper in his ear. Show them, He-Jin. Show them why respect for nature's power isn't weakness, it's survival. Computer, He-Jin commanded, begin playback of archive file 2387. The Amazon incident. He turned to the Myraxians with a serious expression. What you're about to see changed how the Galactic Council views humanity. After this, you'll understand why we're cautious about swamps. Not because we're afraid, but because we're wise. The room grew darker as the main recording began to play. In the dim light, He-Jin could see the Myraxians huddle closer together, their compound eyes fixed on the hologram. They were about to learn why humans, despite all their technology and progress, still treated certain places on Earth with careful respect. The recording started to show his grandfather's expedition, and He-Jin prepared to explain one of humanity's most important lessons. Sometimes, the old fears are the wisest ones to keep. 20 years earlier, Dr. Taiwan Park stood at the edge of the Amazon River, checking his equipment one last time. The morning sun was barely visible through the thick trees, and the air felt heavy with moisture. Birds called from somewhere in the darkness of the forest, their sounds mixing with the constant hum of insects. All cameras are working. Dr. Park, Dong-Hyun Lee said, adjusting the straps of his photography gear. The young photographer had worked with many scientists before, but this was his first Anaconda expedition. His hand shook slightly as he checked his waterproof camera case. Mira Kang walked up to them, her boots making soft sounds in the wet ground. As their tracker, she had already scouted the area ahead. I found fresh signs about 2 kilometers upstream, she said, pointing north. There's a place where the river gets wider and slower. Perfect hunting grounds for big snakes. Taiwan nodded, his gray hair damp with sweat despite the early hour. Remember the rules, he said to his team of 5 researchers. We stay together. We watch the water. And most importantly, we respect what we're looking for. Anacondas don't care about our university degrees or fancy equipment. The team moved slowly through the forest, following Mayre's lead. Their boots sank into the soft ground with each step. Small cameras on poles recorded everything around them. They needed proof of what lived in these waters, proof that would eventually reach all the way to the stars, though they didn't know it yet. After an hour of walking, Mayre held up her hand for everyone to stop. The river had opened into a wide, calm area. Fallen trees stuck out of the dark water like ancient bones. The morning mist made everything look ghostly and strange. Look there, Mayre whispered, pointing to a broken tree branch. Something big moved through here recently. Something very big. Dong-Hyun raised his camera, his hand steadier now. He had filmed tigers in India and crocodiles in Africa. But something about this place made his skin crawl. How big are we talking about? Taiwan stepped closer to the water's edge, studying the marks Mayre had spotted. Based on these signs, we might be dealing with one of the largest specimens ever recorded. His voice held excitement and worry in equal measure. Everyone switch your cameras to full record. If we're right about the size, the scientific community needs to see this. The team spread out along the riverbank, keeping within sight of each other. Each person carried a long pole with a camera on top, designed to look under the water. The morning grew warmer, and sweat ran down their faces as they searched. 3 hours passed. The sun climbed higher, making the humidity worse. Then Mayray saw something that made her freeze. "Dr. Park," she called softly. "The water near that fallen tree. Watch it carefully." Everyone turned to look. At first, they saw nothing unusual in the dark water. Then they noticed how the small fish were acting strange, swimming away from something they couldn't see. Taiwan switched his camera to underwater mode. The screen showed murky green water, then something moved. Something huge. "That can't be right," Dong Hyun whispered, checking his own camera. "The scale must be wrong. Nothing can be that big." But the scale wasn't wrong. As they watched, a shape began to move in the water. It was longer than their boat, thicker than a man's body, and it was moving with purpose. "Nobody move," Taiwan ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Just keep filming. Keep the cameras steady." The water rippled gently as the massive anaconda moved closer to the surface. Its scales showed patterns of dark green and black, perfect camouflage in the murky water. This was what they had come to find. Proof that monsters still existed in Earth's wild places. Then the rain started. It wasn't a gentle rain. The Amazon sky opened up and poured, turning the air into a wall of water. The sudden storm churned the river, making it impossible to see the giant snake anymore. "We need to move back," Mayray shouted over the rain. "The bank isn't safe when it's like this." But before they could retreat, the ground under their feet began to crumble. The rain had turned the riverbank into mud, and the mud was sliding into the water. "Drop the equipment," Taiwan yelled as he saw Dong Hyun struggle with his heavy cameras. "Drop everything." The team scrambled to get away from the collapsing bank, but the mud pulled at their feet. Mayray reached solid ground first and turned to help the others. She grabbed Dong Hyun's hand just as he was about to slip into the river. Then they heard the splash. It wasn't the sound of mud hitting water. It was something else. Something massive entering the river. "Where is it?" Someone screamed. The rain made it impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. Taiwan felt something brush against his leg in the muddy water. His years of experience told him to stay still, to not show fear. But this wasn't like any anaconda he had encountered before. This was a giant from Earth's ancient past, a reminder that humans weren't always at the top of the food chain. The next few moments happened so fast that later, when he tried to write his report, Taiwan had trouble putting them in order. The water exploded around them. Scales rough as tree bark scraped against his arm. Mayray was shouting commands, trying to get everyone to safety. Dong Hyun's camera, still recording despite everything, captured what happened next. The footage would later be shown to alien diplomats as proof of why humans treated certain places with such respect. It showed the largest anaconda ever recorded rising from the churning water like a living mountain, its body thick as a car tire, its head larger than a man's torso. The team's escape from that riverside would become legend among scientists and eventually among the stars. But in that moment, they weren't thinking about making history. They were thinking about survival, about the wisdom of their ancestors who had learned the hard way to fear what lived in Earth's dark waters. As Taiwan helped pull his team to safety, watching the massive shape slide back into the river, he knew they had found what they came for. They had found proof that Earth still had secrets, still had creatures that could humble the most advanced human technology. Years later, his grandson would use this footage to teach alien species why humans were so careful about swamps on other worlds. But right now, soaking wet and shaking with adrenaline, Taiwan just felt grateful. Grateful that his team was alive, and grateful for the healthy fear that had kept them alert enough to survive. The rain continued to pour as they made their way back to base camp. Behind them, in the dark waters of the Amazon, Earth's ancient guardian returned to its watch, a living reminder that some places demanded respect, no matter how far humanity had come. Back in the present day on the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel, the Myraxian delegates sat in stunned silence as the recording ended. The hologram floated in the center of the room, showing the final frames of the massive Anaconda sliding back into the dark water. Ambassador Kix's shell had turned a pale blue color, showing deep shock. This creature, it still exists on your world. Not only exists, He Jin said, standing up to adjust the hologram controls, but thrives. Jai Yun, could you show them the size comparison data? Jai Yun stepped forward and pressed several buttons on her tablet. A new image appeared in the air, a diagram showing an anaconda's size compared to various objects. The specimen in Dr. Park's footage was over 8 meters long. That's longer than 2 of our diplomatic cars put together. Science Officer Trill moved closer to the hologram, her antennae twitching with interest and fear. The crushing force you mentioned earlier, can you provide more details? He Jin nodded and brought up another set of data. An anaconda of this size can squeeze with the force of over 600 kilograms per square inch. That's stronger than your military-grade hydraulic systems. To help you understand, Jai Yun added, seeing the Myraxians struggling with the numbers, that's enough force to crush one of your battle mechs like an empty drink container. The third Myraxian, cultural expert Zax, had been taking notes throughout the presentation. Her claws clicked rapidly on her datapad. But surely, Lieutenant Park, with modern weapons. Let me show you something else, He Jin interrupted gently. He pulled up another video, this one taken just 5 years ago. This is from a research station in the Amazon. They had electric fences, motion sensors, and armed guards. The hologram showed a peaceful scene at first, a modern research facility built on sturdy platforms above a swamp. Then the water began to move. What happened next made the Myraxians click their mandibles in alarm. The Anaconda disabled their security systems simply by crushing the underwater power cables. Jai Yun explained. They didn't even know it was there until it was too late. The station had to be evacuated. He Jin walked around the hologram, letting the aliens see the scene from all angles. You see, respected delegates, it's not just about size or strength. These creatures are intelligent hunters. They can hold their breath for hours, move without making a sound, and strike faster than a human can react. He paused the footage and zoomed in on the anaconda's head. Their teeth are designed to grip and hold. Their bodies are pure muscle. And most importantly, they hunt by feeling vibrations in the water. No cloaking technology can hide from that. Ambassador Kix raised a trembling claw. You mean to tell us that even with all your advanced technology doesn't help much against millions of years of evolution? Jai Yun finished for him. These creatures were perfecting their hunting skills when our ancestors were still learning to walk upright. He Jin brought up one final piece of footage, the thermal imaging from his grandfather's expedition. The infrared view showed how perfectly the anaconda blended with its environment, becoming nearly invisible until the moment it struck. This is why we're careful about swamp worlds, he explained. Not because we're afraid to colonize them, but because we know firsthand how dangerous water predators can be. Our own world taught us that lesson countless times. The Myraxians huddled together, their compound eyes fixed on the thermal footage. Ambassador Kix's voice was barely a whisper. How do your people ever go near such places? He Jin smiled and brought up a new set of images, showing modern scientists studying anacondas, using special equipment and safety protocols. We learn to respect them. We study them. We understand them. But we never, ever underestimate them. Jai Yun added her own perspective. In our history, the humans who survived weren't always the strongest or the best armed. They were the ones who learned to respect nature's power. That wisdom is part of who we are now. The hologram changed again, showing a map of Earth's protected wilderness areas. We keep these places wild on purpose, He-Jin explained. They remind us of important truths. No matter how advanced we become, nature deserves our respect. Science Officer Trill's color had slowly returned to normal. Your species is more complex than we realized, Lieutenant Park. You embrace technology and progress, yet you maintain this healthy fear. Not just fear, He-Jin corrected gently. Understanding. The anaconda is just one example. Earth has many creatures that taught us similar lessons. Each one helped shape how we think about survival. Jai-Yun pulled up the final set of data, showing how Earth's various predators had influenced human development. Our cautious approach to new environments comes from real experience. We learn through generations of close encounters with creatures like the anaconda. Ambassador Kix stood up, his shell now showing bands of respectful green. We will need to revise our colonization proposals. Perhaps there are other types of worlds better suited for human settlement. He-Jin nodded appreciatively. We would welcome that discussion. Earth has taught us to be careful, but it also taught us to be adaptable. We're happy to explore options that take our experience into account. As the meeting drew to a close, cultural expert Zax had one final question. Lieutenant Park, your grandfather, does he still study these creatures? He-Jin's face broke into a proud smile. He does. In fact, he reached for his tablet, bringing up a recent message. He just sent me some new footage. Would you like to see what he found last week? The Myraxians looked at each other nervously, their antennae twitching with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Finally, Ambassador Kix spoke for all of them. Perhaps we should save that for another meeting. As the aliens filed out of the room, Jai-Yun turned to He-Jin with a knowing smile. You didn't tell them about the other Amazon predators. One Earth monster at a time, He-Jin replied, looking at the final frozen image of the anaconda. Let them process this first. Then maybe we'll tell them about the caimans. The hologram flickered off, but the lesson remained. Humans had reached the stars, but they carried with them the wisdom learned in Earth's wild places. It was a wisdom that other species were only beginning to understand. 2 weeks after the demonstration, He-Jin Park stood in the Galactic Council's main chamber. The huge room was filled with representatives from over 30 alien species. They had all gathered to discuss Earth's role in future colonization efforts. The chamber's dome showed a view of space above them, stars twinkling peacefully. He-Jin noticed how different the alien delegates looked now. Instead of seeing humans as oddly fearful, they watched him with new respect in their various types of eyes. Ambassador Kix stepped forward to speak. His shell now showed the formal patterns of a full council presentation. Honored representatives, he began, his translator making his clicks and whistles clear to everyone. We have learned something important about our human friends. The ambassador activated the room's main hologram system. Images from He-Jin's presentation appeared in the air, showing the massive anaconda from his grandfather's footage. Several delegates moved back in their seats, even though it was just a recording. We thought humans were being too careful about swamp worlds, Kix continued. We were wrong. Their caution comes from wisdom earned through hard experience. He-Jin watched as the council members studied the images. Some had tentacles, others had wings or crystal bodies. But they all showed signs of understanding now. They finally saw why humans treated certain environments with such respect. At his seat near the front, He-Jin's communicator buzzed softly. A message had arrived from Earth, from his grandfather. He opened it carefully, trying not to draw attention. Dear He-Jin, the message read, I'm still in the Amazon. You won't believe what we found yesterday. The locals call it the River King. It's bigger than anything we've ever recorded. Sending you the first pictures now. Love, Grandfather. He-Jin's hands shook slightly as he opened the attached images. His sharp intake of breath made Jai-Yun, sitting next to him, look over. Her eyes widened at what she saw on his screen. Meanwhile, Science Officer Trill had taken the speaking position. Our studies show that Earth's dangerous environments helped shape human thinking. They learned to be careful, to plan ahead, to respect natural forces. These traits make them excellent partners for safe and responsible colonization. The images on He-Jin's screen showed something remarkable. His grandfather stood near a riverbank for scale. Behind him, partly visible in the water, was an anaconda that made the one from 20 years ago look small. The local measurement marks suggested it was nearly twice the size. Jia touched He-Jin's arm gently. "They need to see this," she whispered. "It proves everything we've been telling them." He-Jin looked up at the council chamber. The representatives were discussing new plans for human colonization, talking about safer planets better suited to human experience. They had learned to respect human wisdom, but they still didn't understand the full truth about Earth's creatures. He stood up slowly, holding his tablet. "Honored Council," he said, his voice clear in the large room. "I have just received new information from Earth, from the same researcher who provided our earlier footage." The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Kix's antennae twitched with nervous interest. "More information about the creatures you showed us." "Yes," He-Jin said. He walked to the central platform, connecting his tablet to the hologram system. "My grandfather is still studying anacondas in the Amazon. Yesterday, he found something that changes everything we thought we knew about them." The new images appeared above the council chamber. The massive anaconda filled the air above them, its size clear against the trees and boats in the picture. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds, clicks, whistles, and hums of amazement and fear. "This is why we respect our world's wild places," He-Jin explained, his voice steady. "Just when we think we understand them, they show us something new, something bigger, something that reminds us to stay humble." Jia joined him on the platform, adding her expertise. "The creature you see here isn't just bigger than normal. It represents a whole new understanding of what's possible. We thought we knew the limits of how large anacondas could grow. We were wrong." The council members watched in silence as more images appeared. The massive snake moving through the water, its scales gleaming in the sunlight. Local people sharing ancient stories about the River King. Scientific measurements that broke all previous records. "This is what Earth teaches us," He-Jin said softly. "No matter how much we learn, there's always more to discover. No matter how strong we become, nature can still surprise us." Ambassador Kix stepped forward again, his shell showing colors of deep respect. "Lieutenant Park, your people's wisdom goes deeper than we realized. You don't avoid dangerous places because you are weak. You respect them because you are wise." The council chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Representatives from across the galaxy now understood something fundamental about humans. They saw that human caution wasn't fear. It was wisdom earned through generations of living on a world filled with powerful creatures. As the meeting continued, He-Jin sent a message back to his grandfather. "The whole Galactic Council just saw your discovery. They finally understand why we respect Earth's predators. When can you tell me more about the River King?" The answer came quickly. "Come visit, He-Jin. Some things need to be seen in person. The river has more secrets to share." He-Jin smiled, looking up at the stars showing through the chamber's dome. Humans had reached space, made friends with alien species, and learned to travel between worlds. But they had never forgotten the lessons taught by Earth's wild places and the creatures that lived there. The River King was just the latest reminder. No matter how far humanity went into space, Earth would always have something new to teach them. Something to keep them humble. Something to keep them wise. As the council meeting ended, delegates from many worlds came to speak with He-Jin. They all wanted to learn more about Earth's creatures, about the wisdom humans had gained from living alongside such powerful animals, about why respect for nature's strength had made humans better at surviving everywhere, even among the stars. He-Jin answered their questions patiently, but his mind was already planning his next trip home. The Amazon was calling. The River King was waiting, and somewhere in those dark waters, Earth's ancient guardians continued their watch, reminding all who visited that some powers deserved endless respect.